Holding this creature could actually cause my skin to break out in hives, which is why I'm just holding a tree frog as a prop.
There you go, little buddy.
My son and I did an outdoor science challenge to look for the most interesting things that we could find in nature.
All right, the first thing we found is a black walnut. Now the obvious question, why is it called that when the outer hull is green? Turns out the reason it's green is because it hasn't fully ripened yet. And if I were going to explain it to my son, I'd say it's still got some growing room. But what's really cool is that during this stage of the hull being softer, you're able to use the clear juice inside of it for many purposes. For example, one time I had a ringworm appear on my arm, which a ringworm is a fungal infection. It'll show up on your skin in a circular rash. If you get one, you won't miss it. And at the time, I was visiting my grandfather who had a walnut tree in his front yard. So he took one, opened it up, got the juice from it, and he applied it to my ringworm. And a couple days later, it had healed. What I've learned is the reason the walnut juice is able to kill the fungus is because the juice itself has antifungal properties inside of it. Now, I did mention that the juice is clear, but don't let it touch anything because if it does, it'll stain it brown, including my fingers. Although some people do use the juice to be able to dye clothes with, which is pretty cool. Another way you can use a black walnut is to cook with them. People love using these in recipes because the taste is very bold and earthy, supposedly compared to the other type of nuts. And from what we read, it looks like you can use the black walnut to make tea, pesto, honey, cookies, pie, cake. So basically, in another world, instead of Forrest Gump using shrimp, he'd use a black walnut. And one recipe that I would be interested in trying is the ability to make pancake syrup from a black walnut. Our next discovery stands 3/4 of an inch tall. Finding this little acorn was easy, but trying to identify the type of acorn this is took some serious research, which is why I went to Google. And what I learned is that I need to ask a few characteristic questions that'll help me find my answer. Questions like, how big is the acorn? What's its shape? Is it more round or oval? What's the cup, or what I would call the hat, look like? Is the cup scaly, or does it have long matted hair? And what color is the acorn? Although that question can be difficult because acorns love to fall off trees before they finish growing and they're left in the green color state. And so it's hard to tell what type of acorn it could be because of that. But after comparing the one I found to pictures of different types of acorns, I believe I came to the conclusion that this here is a southern red oak acorn. And after that introduction, I think I need a coffee. One of the fun facts that I found is that you can actually make a caffeine-free coffee-like drink from grounded, roasted acorns. You know, the lifespan of an acorn is pretty fascinating. And really, I see it as almost inspirational because if you think about it, if this southern red oak acorn were to be planted, it'll grow up into a huge oak tree and live up to like 300 years old. And so the acorn is physically showing us that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Okay, with this next one, I hate to tell you, but you're not going to be able to find this little creature at your local petting zoo. This is the American dagger moth caterpillar. This yellow fuzzy worm, it looks harmless. But if I were to touch this caterpillar, which I happened to touch it while I was filming it, but I had no idea. But if I were to touch this caterpillar, some of the hairs could fall off onto my skin, which would make my skin irritated, have a burning sensation, and basically, I would get hives. The American dagger moth caterpillar, wow, what a name, loves to feed on leaves from many different trees, and one of those is an oak tree, which makes a lot of sense because around my house, I have a lot of oak trees. But another reason he's roaming around in my backyard, these caterpillars will scout out the best place to set up for winter to spin themselves into a cocoon. And there they'll spend the next several months as a pupa. I just think that word's funny. The pupa is the time where it'll grow from like a larval to the adult stage. So basically it's like a kid goes into a sleeping bag and then pops out an adult. And so when summer times arrives, this yellow fuzzy caterpillar will be yellow no more because it'll emerge from its cocoon into a large brown moth known as the American dagger, which sounds like it could be a Western movie. Okay, this next discovery makes me sad and also brings out a lot of dad jokes. This is called a ringless honey mushroom, and it might be called honey, but it's definitely not sweet. And so now that it's fall, I'll no longer give my yard a haircut, and I saw this group of mushrooms, and they look harmless. I just see a family reunion going on with these mushrooms. But what I learned is that the ringless honey mushroom appears because they're growing out of rotting wood. My first thought is, okay, well, it can't be my house because my house doesn't extend that far. So what could these be growing from? And my next thought is, all right, maybe there's a long tree root that's reached out this far. And as I read more about them, it turns out that they not only just appear from rotting wood, they actually cause root rot or oak rot. And so now not only does my oak trees have the American dagger to look for, but now I have to add these mushrooms to the list. And what's sad is that if the ringless honey mushroom gets a hold of a small tree, it could take it out and kill it within a few months or a couple of years. And it would do the same to a larger tree. Once the fungus takes it over, it'll kill it. And I never would have thought that this random family of mushrooms was now a family of killers. And before I share with you what we found that dates back to the early 1900s, we found another family reunion going on under a stone in our flower bed. So check it out. These are red fire ants. Now what you're seeing right now is pretty neat. When I picked up the stone, the fire ants started scattering, but they were picking up the larva with their mouth and carrying it back to their underground tunnels they made. I thought it was neat because they were protecting the larva. And if you look real close at this larva, that black dot that you're seeing is actually the eyeball of a baby ant. The reason they picked this stone to live under is because they love shaded, warm, and wet areas to build their nest. But when someone comes and disrupts their home, and me picking up the stone, the fire ants will actually send out workers to go and attack the intruder by stinging and biting them repeatedly, which I hope that never happens to you, but it's very painful. Now, the fire ants' diet that I found is very interesting. What if I told you that they eat like us? They're omnivores, which means they'll eat plants and animals. But some humans don't even do that. So let's say you're eating a steak with a side salad. But you better watch out, because what they're going to do is they're going to send out foraging workers to leave the nest in search of food. And when they find your steak and salad, as they return back to the colony, they're going to mark the ground with a chemical pheromone trail that the worker ants will then trace back to your steak and salad, which is fascinating and yet scary for the sake of your food. Even though you don't want to mess with fire ants, because they can hurt you pretty bad, there is a positive of having them around, because they're really good at keeping away spiders, scorpions, ticks, chiggers, fleas, and even cockroaches. And you know, for that, I think I'm cool with signing another lease for them to live under that stone, as long as they keep their promise. Okay, now for the mysterious thing that we found from the 1900s. So to give you some context, we bought a home made in the 1960s, and the previous owner warned me, hey, you're gonna find an old tombstone under your porch, but don't be alarmed, there's not a dead body under the house. And yet, that still made me curious, and so I did some digging, so to speak. And I came down to two conclusions. The first conclusion, in the early 1900s, when someone passed away, the family would get two tombstones made. The first one was for the gravesite, and the second one was for the family to take home and put in their flower garden. The second conclusion is that there is a dead body under our house.
Which, if you need something fun to watch, check this video out.
Pupa.